Good day, everyone. I'm Cedric Daniel Barcena, a graduate student taking up Master in Asian Studies at the University of the Philippines Diliman Asian Center. Today, as part of our core requirements for AS211, I will share my research titled Mapping the Indo-Pacific Minilaterals and the ASEAN Centrality Towards a Peaceful Southeast Asia. To start, my research aims to ask how can ASEAN, a formal institution, maximize the potential of minilateralism's objectives in the Indo-Pacific region? Will ASEAN centrality contribute or be in conflict with the objectives and purposes of these minilateral groups? As part of my objectives, I hope to illustrate through a map the points of convergence for cooperation and identify the barriers to ASEAN on the emergence of minilateralism. Second, I hope to explain the evolution of minilateral from traditional to non-traditional security cooperation. I also wish to determine the gaps and role of ASEAN in achieving a peaceful and stable Southeast Asian region, and finally to analyze the potential contribution of ASEAN and/or its conflict with the objectives and purposes of these minilateral groups. In a 2021 survey on the state of Southeast Asia, the respondents viewed China as the most influential political strategic with 49.1% and economic power with 76.3% in the region, which was a record that it holds since 2019. However, the same survey also revealed that the peoples in the region signified that they are worried about the rise of China in both aspects. The United States occupied the second spot as the most influential political strategic with 30.4% and the third spot for the economic power with 7.4% in the region. This showed that Southeast Asia is caught between the two major powers that shape its geopolitics. Troy Lee Brown explained that the definition of a region is inseparable from the notions of power, and it essentially decides who is included and who is excluded, as well as where the key hubs of regional power reside. In relation to this, William Tow noted that China's attitude on whether it will cooperate or compete with the region's maritime powers on various issues and crises will determine whether the region will fall into a multipolar state of anarchy or develops into a stable regional security order. To provide a clear understanding of multilateralism, Tow argued that multilateralism and multilateral security politics can be viewed as a formal effort by three or more states to build trust and avoid conflict by identifying, institutionalizing, and observing rules and norms for a common vision of regional and international order. Uh, Moreover, multilateralism is usually a large group of countries that adhere to the norms promulgated by the organization. Furthermore, from a constructivist point of view, institutions served as expressions of the social rules and norms that constrain the international society. An example of multilateralism, especially in Southeast Asia, is ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which was founded on August 8, 1967, that adheres to the principles of non-interference, mutual respect for sovereignty, and consensus decision-making that continues to shape ASEAN identity and regional security architecture. Through this, the United stand on regional and international issues, known as the ASEAN Centrality, helps in realizing ASEAN's collective interest and vision. Kuhn further argued that the regional norms set by ASEAN eventually become international norms where the major powers are willing to abide. Later on, we will see that with the engagement of ASEAN with its or with the key players in Southeast Asia, they are um, persuaded to abide by the rules set by the organization. For almost a decade after ASEAN was established, the first ASEAN summit was held in February 1976 in Bali that concluded with the signing of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, or TAC. Shauna Wright highlighted that the TAC was a non-aggression pact among ASEAN states and a code of conduct for state interaction in Southeast Asia. He further mentioned that the TAC was a step towards the realization of the Zone of Peace, Freedom, and Neutrality Declaration, or ZOPFAN, in Southeast Asia. It was also evident that with the signing of the TAC, ASEAN arrived at a consensus that internal security or centrality would help in assuring regional cooperation, and eventually cooperation beyond the region, since the treaty encouraged the accession of non-ASEAN member states. Currently, the TAC served as the entry point for external partners in engaging with ASEAN. There are also challenges and critiques towards ASEAN as a formal multilateral organization. Several scholars argued that the organization tends to fail in resolving key issues and crises that the region faces. This is due to the principles of non-interference and the consensus-driven decision-making process in which each member was given a sort of a veto power that will protect the member's sovereignty on issues that may affect their national interest. With this lack of effective collective action, these scholars argued that this paved the way for the emergence of minilateralism in the Indo-Pacific region. Now let's move on to the definition of minilateralism. Xing and Teo's definition of minilateralism supported the arguments of several scholars on the weakness of multilateralism. According to them, it is composed of smaller groups of countries towards addressing issues of common concern in ways that the formal institutions are unable to. Compared to multilateralism, Tao's definition of minilateralism refers to the ad hoc or informal initiative intended to address a specific traditional security issue among like-minded states within a finite period of time. Moreover, unlike multilateralism, this type of alliance is not inclusive and may only involve the smallest number of states to generate solutions to regional issues. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad, is one of the minilaterals that emerged in the Indo-Pacific region. For this part of the presentation, I wish to provide an overview of the Indo-Pacific concept. So the Indo-Pacific is a regional reconceptualization utilized by the Quad to address deficiencies in institutional architecture following the rise of China and the lack of US concrete policies in the region. It may be recalled that the officials reunited during the 31st ASEAN Summit and related summits in Manila to discuss issues of common concerns in the Indo-Pacific. Fast forward September 2021, United States President Joe Biden hosted the first Quad Summit at the White House. During the summit, Quad leaders reaffirmed their commitment towards promoting the free, open, rules-based order rooted in international law and undaunted by coercion to bolster security and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. The Indo-Pacific strategy of the Quad was said to be a response to China's rising power and hegemonic tendencies in Asia through its Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to promote connectivity among the continents of Asia, Europe, and Africa. Utilizing Lee Brown's concept of a region, as I mentioned a while ago, it can be pictured that the division created by the two opposing concepts of the Quad and that of the China's Belt and Road Initiative. In view of geopolitical uncertainty, a number of similar minilateralism emerged in the Indo-Pacific region. An interesting point was raised by Toh and Lee Brown, stating that the minilateralism also provides a revitalized spoke-to-spoke system in order to lessen the reliance on the US. For the purpose of this research, the minilaterals to be examined will be grouped into three categories. First, the US-led Minilaterals. Second, the spokes-to-spoke alliances. And lastly, the Southeast Asia's indigenous Minilaterals. To start with the US-led Minilaterals, we have the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which was formed in 2004. These are a group of countries who were first to respond to the victims of the Boxing Day tsunami by providing disaster relief operations and humanitarian assistance. Fast forward to September 2021, the first Quad Summit was held, and they identified new priority areas of cooperation, which include COVID-19 response, building quality infrastructure, combating climate crisis, partnership on emerging technologies, space cooperation, and cybersecurity. In several statements of the Quad, they reaffirmed their support for ASEAN, which according to them is the heart of their Indo-Pacific strategies. Next, we have the US-Japan Australia Trilateral Strategic Dialogue, which was formed in 2005. And the aim is to help fight the war on terror and strengthen US bilateral cooperation with its allies. According to Lee Brown, the Trilateral Strategic Dialogue served as the blueprint for a further spoke-to-spoke relationships as part of the regional architecture. The priority areas of the TSD are maritime security cooperation, pandemic response, to stem nuclear proliferation, countering terrorism, sustainable infrastructure, and ICT security. Similar to the Quad, the TSD also recognized the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and its principles. Next is the US-Japan-India cooperation. It was formed in 2011 and basically because of their concern over China's threats. The priority areas include maritime security, cooperation, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief or HIDAR, and connectivity. Next, we have the Australia-UK-US cooperation or AUKUS, which was formed in 2021, and basically it concerns over a political revisionist China. The priority areas include maritime security cooperation, promoting connectivity, security and defense-related science and technology, industrial bases, and supply chains. Several statements of the AUKUS also committed to work with ASEAN as their partner. Moving on, we have the spoke-to-spoke minilaterals. First, we have the Australia-France-India cooperation, which was formed in 2020. Their main areas of cooperation include maritime safety and security, COVID-19 response, climate change mitigation, connectivity, cyber and critical technology, and HIDAR. Similar to the minilaterals I've mentioned before, the Australia-France-India cooperation reaffirmed their commitment to AIOP and its principles. They recognize ASEAN as their partner. Next, we have the Australia-Japan-India cooperation, which was formed in 2015 and similar to the previous minilaterals I've mentioned before, they are concerned over China's economic threats. And the areas of cooperation would include maritime security cooperation and to have a supply chain resilience, connectivity, and counterterrorism. Next, we have the Australia-India-Indonesia cooperation, which was formed in 2017, and that is because of the rise in Chinese belligerence. So the areas of cooperation would include strengthening maritime infrastructure and connectivity, security of the sea lanes of communications, and freedom of navigation. Several articles mention that the Australia-India Indonesia cooperation complemented the works of the East Asia Summit, which was an ASEAN-led mechanism. Next, we move on to the indigenous Southeast Asian Minilaterals. The first is the Indonesia-Malaysia-Philippines Cooperation, which was formed in 2016, and that is because of the emergence of terrorist groups and maritime attacks in, in this region of Southeast Asia. The areas of cooperation would include intelligence information to prevent uh, terrorist financing and to contain terrorism and related activities. So they wanted to enhance the intelligence and information sharing, as well as to stop um, and contain the spread of terrorism and terrorism related content in cyberspace, particularly in social media. Next, we have the Mekong River Commission, which was founded in 1995. It's non-traditional security issue that they wanted to address was the water and environmental and water security issues. So they wanted to the Mekong River Commission wanted to enhance their national plans on basin-wide perspectives to strengthen the regional cooperation as well as to enhance the institutional effectiveness and efficiency of the Commission. Last, we have the Malacca Straits Patrol, which was formed in 2004, and they wanted these members wanted to ensure security of the Straits of Malacca and Singapore. And they do this through a combined maritime and air patrols known as the Eyes in the Sky, and they have the Intelligence Exchange Group. With all these minilaterals that emerge in the Indo-Pacific region, this part of the presentation map together these regional groupings or minilaterals in the Indo-Pacific, and I've identified at least 5 common priorities of these minilaterals. First is health security, including the effective vaccines, access to effective vaccines, and response to COVID-19. Next is digital technology and ICT security. It includes security and defense-related science and technology and addressing cybersecurity threats. Third, we have environmental protection and sustainability, including access to water and humanitarian assistance and disaster response. Fourth is maritime security and cooperation, which is achieved through joint patrols in both air and water, as well as to counter terrorism, especially sea piracy. Fifth is supply chain resiliency. That includes infrastructure development, both physical and digital infrastructures, and not to impede the free flow of goods. So, to reiterate, the emergence of minilaterals was due to the lack of concrete results from the multilateral organizations like ASEAN in addressing pressing issues that are confronting the region. The consensus-based decision-making of ASEAN was criticized for its because it hinders the organization's swift response to issues. Similarly, minilaterals also adhere to the consensus-driven decision-making process. However, minilaterals were quick to make decisions given that they have smaller number of participants and are eager to address common issues. In addition, the paper agrees with Turkey's argument that plurality and diversity of minilaterals also accommodated the imperatives of smaller states as seen with the formation of minilaterals among spokes and groupings among developing countries. This, in turn, helps in balancing power in the region and avoid the dominance of major powers like the US or China in Southeast Asian security architecture. Another gap seen in the multilateral or minilateral groupings as compared with multilateral organizations is the lack of secretariat to track the progress of cooperation. For ASEAN, they have the ASEAN Secretariat that takes stock the implementation of these programs. On the other hand, this lack of secretariat was mainly because of because these are ad hoc groupings and exemplifies that loose organizations. Above all, it is worthy to point out that the members of the Minilaterals in this research are all partners of ASEAN, dialogue partners, and development partners. As such, it can be argued that the ASEAN principles, norms, and treaties apply to all these partners, including the TAC that I've mentioned a while ago. And that said, I argue that ASEAN is able to promote regional cooperation and at the same time manages the peaceful coexistence of states. Finally, to answer my research question, as previously illustrated, ASEAN sits at the heart of the Indo-Pacific Minilaterals. Thus, the organization must continue to maximize this potential by promoting its norms, values, and principles through socialization with its dialogue partners. ASEAN must also ensure that the organization's credibility and establish peace and stability in the region through the TAC and subfund will not be undermined by these key players. ASEAN should aspire to continue its strategy of balancing power in Asia through its ASEAN-led mechanisms. In this situation, ASEAN centrality must prosper in order to illustrate that the organization is a model of regionalism and a global player. This paper also agrees with Turkey that minilaterals, with its like-minded states, may help ASEAN to streamline the negotiations before jumping into multilateral discussions. For their part, each ASEAN member state must not lose sight of their objectives in its participation with the minilaterals, and that is to address issues confronting the region that will further enhance internal security, leading to the strengthening of ASEAN centrality. With this, it can be argued that the minilaterals complement rather than contradict the organization's ambitions in the region. As seen in the previous slides, the themes and priorities of these minilateral organizations, which includes non-traditional security cooperation, can work in tandem with the priority areas and cooperation outlined in the ASEAN Outlook in the Indo-Pacific. Most of these minilaterals reaffirm their commitment to the implementation of the Outlook and its principles. Thus, it is a good opportunity for ASEAN to look at the convergence of these interests in order to better realize its community building process. In conclusion, seeing that these minilaterals are not in conflict with the collective vision of ASEAN, the organization must step up in dealing it with the non-traditional threats in order to stay relevant. So thank you very much for listening. Have a pleasant day. I would welcome your insights regarding this research. Feel free to comment below. I would like to give credit to the following sources that I've used for this research. Thank you very much.